guys. Happy Sunday. Hopefully, I don't lose daylight for quick here. So, I got to jump on here and talk about what everybody got going on for winter, winter daily drivers, winter wheeling rigs, whatever. So, I am. You guys, you guys can help me out. Just help me subscribe and like the channel and all that stuff. Watch some videos of mine to help me out with the channel. But so I've got right now, really only have the one winter rig. So we kind of live in an area now, like unlike most of my life, where we don't get much snow. We only have a couple days of snow a year. So I've been hanging on to that four-wheel drive. It's the '73 Chevy Silverado regular cab short bed four-wheel drive. Um, it's good enough just for a couple days of winter there anyway. So that was the only reason I was kind of hanging on to it. I was debating on fixing it, but I don't have the space. So, but that truck's got basically a, I think it's got a 29-inch tire on it with winter studs. It's for basically brand new tires, but something like that. I got thinking about this because of how many people are getting into accidents lately. It's crazy. Like, man, the whole pretty much east to west coast, it seemed like in the last week here, got just absolutely annihilated with snow. And man, there's just crashes everywhere and people honestly on the road that really shouldn't be on the road. And I know you would see this lots when I used to live in Canada, as nobody was ready for it. People wait till too late to put their winter tires on. A lot of people don't even put winter tires on. They don't carry proper stuff with them, whatever. So, when you get down to my area, you're not going to freeze to death like you would in Canada, but a lot of that kind of stuff in Canada, you have to carry things like winter clothes and shovels and, like whatever, right? So, but with that said, though, like I said, there's a lot of people like I think the other day I'm pretty sure it was in Indiana or Ohio, somewhere over there, northeast. Anyways, there's something like a 61 car pileup I saw, and I started thinking like, how does that happen? And I know sometimes the people in the middle are probably not the ones that are necessarily causing it, but they're in the middle of this whole train wreck of even if you have good tires and you can stop and somebody piles into you, then you have this whole ordeal of it being a big issue. So I was talking to people online about this, and it's like people don't understand things like how much of a difference like winter tires make. For example, like there's a huge difference from like an all season tire to like an actual winter tire. Like especially when you're talking like ice, that's like 100% difference on ice, right? So, but I don't know, man. People, wow. So a lot of people like they just aren't ready for winter. I don't know. Like I know a lot of people are on tight budgets and things like that, but man, if you're going to be on the road in these crazy winter conditions, you can see the weather on your map. You know it's going to be bad. It's either going to be raining or icy or snowy or whatever. Like, you got to be ready for it. So there's a lot of vehicles out there these days that are pretty capable if they have a decent set of tires on them. You can get anything all-wheel drive. Honestly, most of the new vehicles that are like SUVs and stuff like that, you don't see it as much in the southern US, I guess, because it's not needed as much. But when you get into like Canada or northern US, a lot of like the SUVs are all-wheel drive, things like that. It makes a huge difference for stopping and starting and whatever overall adds to the weight a little bit and things like that. Um, but so yeah, for me, I don't need a dedicated winter rig anymore. A lot of things to think about if you are like in a winter area is like, and they're putting salt and things on the road is probably don't want something that you're gonna have to care about a ton because once salt gets in things, you never get it out. Everybody that's in the Midwest or the salt belts or Ontario, Quebec, any of those places, if you've ever been seeing vehicles from those places, they just get salt and everything, and you can't get it clean, right? Even if you want to, you can wash it every couple of days if you want, but it's never going to get it from underneath all the undercarriage and all the little nooks and crannies and things like that. So that's something to think about, and I think that's sometimes where it's like valid to have just a dedicated four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive winter rig. And if you don't, maybe it's something that you at least put winter tires on. We just picked up a 2002 Camaro. It's just a 6 cylinder. Bought 4 winter tires for my son for just a couple of days out of the year that it's basically going to be a little bit snowy and icy. That'll make a huge difference. So he'll just take them off in the spring, put another set of summer tires on, and then go back to driving the summer tires on it again. But those tires, if you put them on winter rims, they'll last for you know, probably 5 years or something of, especially around these areas. It seems like the compound wears down on them. I know from running them in Canada and things like that, the compound would be pretty worn down, in a like by the end of season 2, I always found that they were worn down. They still work way better than being like a just a regular all season tire, because all season tires get really stiff, so they don't have that same bite. But there is some decent tires all around. Like right now, this particular truck is pretty heavy. I run Cooper Discover 8 AT3s on it, which are discontinued now, so I don't know what I'm gonna do after this, but the truck's heavy enough that it makes up that difference on that. But again, if it had dedicated winter tires, I mean, it would be a machine, and in comparison, it would be night and day difference. So, what's up, Angel? Oh, lots bouncing in and out here. So, so to people that say that winter tires don't make a difference, it makes a huge difference. And people that say, well, it's like just the vehicle or whatever. No, it's the driver too. I mean, I drove most of my life without winter tires, and when I had winter tires, it was like a night and day difference. I mean, I remember in Canada, when I was younger, just doing stupid things, and we'd be driving through fields in 4 feet of snow with winter tires and just plowing snow over the hood and things like that. I've had trucks buried up to the window in 2-wheel drive trucks with like winter tires on them and a bunch of weight in the back and things like that. So it makes a gigantic difference in how much it starts and stops. You know, I used to have old vehicles, like carbureted vehicles that wouldn't idle themselves down. So you'd get to a stop sign, you have to put it in neutral, otherwise it would literally not stop spinning the tires and things like that. So just, I guess, I don't know, goofing around, drifting around on back roads and things like that. You learn how to like actually do that kind of stuff. So then when it gets icy or whatever, you're just familiar with it, right? So it's not like any sort of it's not really like that big learning curve. It's the stopping most of the time that's the biggest thing. People anticipate it not taking as long to stop on, especially when it's like really bad. Like, if you get that quick rain where it's just like beads, basically, it's almost like a curling rink where it like has the little beads or whatever. Hello. So it's just, yeah, it's one of those things that if you don't have winter tires, it makes a huge difference, because winter tires have such a soft compound in them. That's why they stop so much quicker, right? They have sipes on them too. So there's like little sipes built into the tires that like, you know, basically suction to the surface of the ice or whatever. Um, so it does make a huge difference, even if you buy just knockoff generic Chinese, whatever winter tires. If you're in a snow belt area, you should definitely have winter tires. It makes a gigantic difference. Just buy an extra set of rims and take them off in the spring so that it'll last you at least a few years anyways or whatever. So it's not that huge of an investment. We just bought 4 tires for that car for like, I think they're $300 for winter tires. We got them just a hair different size because they were a bit cheaper or whatever. So we just got a little tiny different size or whatever, just because they actually didn't even really make the size of winter tires, but doesn't matter if it's a little tiny bit shorter, a little tiny bit taller, who cares? It's just a winter tire, it doesn't really matter. Put your regular ones back on afterwards, whatever. So, but Chris said there's lots of options out there. You could buy an old beater truck, you could buy a little, V6 4-cylinder, whatever, anything, just something little GMC Jimmy or Blazer or anything. Like if you're in a real snow area, you probably should have 4-wheel drive. I just saw if you watch Thunderhead 289, Luke, the mini, he put the anyways, he put the lawnmower carb on a vehicle there. Well, he just threw together a winter rig or whatever there, and just basically just has like implement tires on his old Suburban or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of vehicles that are already rusted away that maybe have plows and stuff on them. And if you're only going to drive, you know, 5 or 10 minutes to work and you don't really care about, the fuel mileage or whatever and things like that, good enough. Just find yourself an old a little bit whatever rough around the edge of the vehicle, and then who cares if it gets a little bit beat up in the snow or if it gets a little bit of salt on it or whatever. You don't have to care about it as much. Good enough for like that. And if you can't have a second vehicle, you don't have the space or whatever it is, then get yourself some good winter tires. So there's a lot of capable vehicles out there. So if you're in an area like in Canada, for example, if you're in an area where you get a lot of snow like that and you're going to have to drive through it, maybe we like, for example, we've got friends that end up having to drive down back roads to get out, and they either have to plow themselves out or have a good four-wheel drive to get out. Then it probably makes more sense to get something like a truck that has like a good amount of ground clearance, something with some weight to it too, like suburban or SUV, like a bigger SUV, like something like that that you can actually have some ground clearance or whatever. Truck like mine, this is just a regular, it's untouched, but it's a Dodge 3500 or whatever, 2500, I guess I should say. So thanks for the high five. So there's a lot of ways to get around it. Again, on your situation, a lot of people are only going to just drive a couple blocks to work and a couple blocks back, whatever. So it just kind of depends, whatever what you're using it for. If you're driving 100 miles a day, then you should probably have something that's obviously pretty capable of doing that, because there is tons of people that drive that far, even in the city. It's not uncommon to drive 25, 30 miles one way by the time you get to work or whatever. So you live a little bit rural or whatever it is. But yeah, like I said, if you're gonna have like a winter vehicle, or if you just want like a goof around vehicle, like a off-road wheeling rig, there's lots of cool stuff out there for that. Same thing, like I said, just something with a little bit of ground clearance. You know, old four-wheel drive trucks. There's lots of old four-wheel drive trucks, even like a six-cylinder or whatever, with some huge tires on it. A lot of those trucks can fit 33-inch tires or whatever. If you'd be amazed at how much snow they'll go through. I know a lot of the older, like I always get them mixed up. I think Range Rovers or Land Rovers. I think they're Range Rovers, the old ones, like from like the early '90s, mid '90s, maybe something like that. Those things are like super capable. Any Jeeps, there's a lot of Jeeps. Obviously, the Jeep Cherokees and things like that. There's a bazillion of those things around. They got pretty good ground clearance. Most of them are 318s or whatever. They're not crazy on like bad on fuel, so they get around really good. And same thing, you throw a set of real tires on it, and I mean they're a weapon in the snow. So you can get something like that for just a winter beater and not have to care about it, and probably last you years and years and years, and just good enough for that. A lot of people have ones that they can just use where they just use it for like pulling their boat or whatever too, and things like that or whatever, like for the summer. Just get it cleaned off really good after in the spring or whatever, and then you got yourself like a little camping rig or whatever it is. So there's lots of options out there, but we're just probably going to keep this. We only have a front wheel drive Traverse right now for our main vehicle, so and it's not going to get winter tires because again, we only have a week of snow a year, if that even. So we'll see. We don't really even need to leave when it snows, but we always seem to get trapped in town when it happens. It seems to be a cycle every year. Last year, my son actually has a two-wheel drive truck, and he just bought a set of they're basically cable chains, and those things are incredible too. People wouldn't believe how good they are. I actually knew people back in the day that had two-wheel drive trucks. The one guy there, same thing. I've seen him go through some crazy stuff with those cable chains on there, and then pull off on the highway. And it's not like a set of like real chains where it's like so loud, it's like clunking or whatever. But I know people that ran real chains too, where you put like a real set of chains on it around, on two-wheel drive vehicles if they're just beating them around the city and stuff in Canada. I had friends that did that, and those things are just like they'll just, I mean, on ice they'll go anywhere, right? But they're super loud, and then it's kind of obnoxious. So those cable ones are good if you got stuck or something like that. You can keep them, and they just come in a little case or whatever. I think they're like $100. You can get them from O'Reilly's or something like that. You can just keep them in the back of your vehicle, and you can put them on if you're stuck, and probably get yourself out if nothing else. But he threw a set of those on because we're on a really steep hill where our house is, and to get up there, if you're at the bottom, it gets pretty gnarly. So he threw a set on there, and he drove up that hill pretty easily last year. So the year before, I think we had two or three vehicles stuck at the bottom. What's up, classic car guy? Do I know you? I can't remember. And I'm like the worst with names. It's starting to get dark here. We'll see how much more light I have. I just figured I'd jump on a little bit here before it got dark or whatever. I was going to do it earlier and I totally forgot. So that's kind of what I'm going to do for that one. It's actually funny because this, if you guys saw, I haven't really talked much about it because I haven't put any videos on it, but I bought this like 69 Buick Skylark. It has winter tires on it. They're ancient. They're probably as bad as like summer tires, but they're, I mean, they can actually be studded too. I personally don't, you like, if I was to put winter tires on, I don't really like studded tires most of the time. They're good when they're brand new, but I found with them, like I put a set on one truck one time and then drove it through the winter and I was driving it quite a bit. But into like probably halfway through the winter, actually, there was nothing left of the tips of them where the carbide is. So then it was almost like I found when you were after they wore down a little bit, like the whole surface of the tire wasn't touching. So then when you would hit the brakes, it was like almost worse because it was like half the tire was touching because it was like picking it up off the ground. Like that's sort of what it seemed like to me. So I never went back to studs after that. But I've had like the cheapest knockoff brand Canadian tire ones or whatever. They had their own brand, Motorcraft or Motormaster. Sorry, I had some of those on the car one time. A friend of mine could attest to that. We went freaking off-roading with that thing and it was freaking as deep as the car and just wheeling around everywhere. I remember we drove down into a ditch because there was a four-wheel drive truck stuck in a ditch and we just pushed him out, just literally just bumper to bumper and pushed him out or whatever. But that was just like a set of cheap winter tires at that time. And I only had two. I only had the front ones. I didn't even have the back ones, but it was just a little front wheel drive car. It's kind of funny. But winter tires make a massive difference. I've run Blizzaks a bunch. They're definitely good. They're way more expensive. I don't know if they last any longer. I don't really feel like they're better, but you know, you're to get a set of Blizzak truck tires now, it's probably close to 2 grand. So it's a little bit of a downfall there or whatever. So yeah, as a car guy, and get over here. So that's my advice is if you are going to drive something around, even if you only have front wheel drive, if you just get something with good winter tires on it, that doesn't even they can just be Chinese or whatever. I would think that from my experience is like when you get the off brand stuff, they're not as they're the ones that don't seem to stay as durable longer term. So maybe like probably like, you know, 3 years down the road, that's probably the end of them being super soft or whatever. Whereas Blizzaks, I think they maybe like have a little bit better, at least they used to. They would stay a little bit more, I guess, pliable. You keep them inside during like the summer and stuff, then they're usually pretty good too. We had winter tires on our last Traverse, but it was all-wheel drive. But I mean, it was a night and day difference. So typically, if we lived in a snow state where there was a lot of snow, we would. This truck, I couldn't run them because it's so heavy that it would just wear them out. Like and I don't like I run 16 ply tires, so I don't even think they make 16 ply winter tires. So that's kind of something too. But you got a lot of weight, you're not going to be able to run that. But I never really felt the need for them, although it would make a difference for sure. But again, I'm not really going into the snow as much in the winter time. The odd time I do, but that's about it. So, but like I said, there's tons of little cheap. Like I said, doesn't even have to be like I said, it doesn't even have to be a four-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, although there is a ton of those around. It doesn't have to be. If you're gonna have front-wheel drive, spend even if you're so broke that you can only afford two front tires, at least put two front ones because the first part is when you hit the brakes, those tires are going to grab first. And when you go to accelerate, those tires are going to grab first. I know a lot of shops these days don't want to put mix match tires on. Like if you put two, I know that was starting to be a thing in Canada. They wouldn't do it. So if you said, hey, just put these two new winter tires in the front, they wouldn't do it. So you'd take them into them, you take your wheels and tires and take it into the tire shop, then put them on yourself or whatever, or else get it on an extra set of wheels and then just put them on. A lot of people sell them. Like if you're in northern states, you see a lot of people selling them on classified sites and stuff too. So you can just find a set too that you can just literally throw on your car and they're already mounted and everything. You don't got to deal with all that. So I'm thankful I don't need winter tires anymore either. Even if you had them, you still wouldn't get up our hill. I don't think not without all-wheel drive. Our hill is like probably this. It's steep, and it's not just like a for like 50 feet or something. You're talking. It's like the full length of the hill is probably half a mile. The first part of it is like less steep than the last part, so it's probably half. It's probably like a quarter mile of like really steep, and then probably a quarter mile of not as steep. Yeah, I know. That's what I said too. We should leave to somewhere else warm. But when we start to see the bad weather coming in, we should just leave for like 2 weeks and then come back when it's done. Ta-da! Uh, so yeah, we've been lucky so far this year. We haven't really had any bad weather. It's already getting into, I guess, so like early December. So it's usually January. It seems like we haven't. We've only lived here for a couple of years, so we can't really speak to it longer term. But it seems like January is kind of the month. But well, it starts to get tricky for us to because I have this camper and it's got water and stuff in it, and so I stay in it, and I don't want to like really winterize it. So that's kind of a thing for me personally as far as like winter stuff. So if you live in those winter states, you guys know if you have campers or any of that stuff, you have to winterize it. Usually by September in Canada, we were winterizing our camper already because mid-September it starts freezing, and then you got broken pipes or frozen stuff or whatever. So that's kind of an ordeal there. But luckily, we don't have to deal with that anymore. The one thing is like you bring vehicles from the south, which I never really had to ever think about that before. But if I bring like cars from the south, even like classic cars or trucks or whatever, like you have to remember to check the antifreeze in them because they'll put they'll put water in them when they have a leak or doing whatever maybe, and they just don't put antifreeze back in, and people don't realize that it's like basically ends up like rusting out the cooling system because of that or whatever. But a lot of people do it because they're just too cheap to put antifreeze in. But antifreeze is actually like a lubricant, right? So that ends up causing a whole bunch of other problems. But it's more of like I bring it back, and like this time of year, if I bring a car back or something or a truck back or whatever it is, if I bring it back home and then it doesn't have antifreeze in it, and I forget about it, that's like a huge ordeal. So I'm like really, really picky about checking that kind of stuff all the time now. A lot of people don't even realize, like in the colder states and stuff, but like honestly, just a lot of people who don't know car stuff these days. But they make antifreeze testers where you can just squeeze it into this little antifreeze tester. They're like $6, and it tells you how strong the antifreeze is. Because let's say if it gets down to minus 30, and your antifreeze is only good to like minus 15, it'll basically gel the antifreeze. It turns into like it's essentially almost freezing it is what's happening, and then you'll end up like freezing up a thermostat or something like that. So, but those are the kind of things that people that maybe have never had that problem don't even think about. They just, oh, okay, well, it's winter, just keep driving or whatever. So that's something that people definitely should keep an eye out on or whatever. But like I said, there's a lot of like winter things that you should be doing if you're that's what I'm getting at. Like I've just been watching people post up pictures and videos and all this stuff, and I'm like, holy cow, man! There's like crashes nonstop, and you know, people. I mean, not even just like a little bit, like they're going like a little bit too fast. It's like there's guardrails that are those wire guardrails and stuff, and cars end up hitting those things and flying like freaking 50 feet on the other side of them, either rolling or barrel rolling or freaking whatever. They're like 50 feet on the other side of it. So it means they were going way too fast. So even if you were like kind of ready for it, and you had the best stuff around, set of winter tires isn't going to help you. But that's just people that are just inexperienced and don't realize like, okay, I can normally stop here in 50 feet. And now it's going to take me 500 feet to stop when I'm going that same speed or whatever. So kind of what it is. A lot of people these days they don't realize how blessed we are with all these like gadgets to make our life easier, like anti-lock braking systems and cars that just run so much better. Like I said, back in the day, it would get wintertime and you'd have a carbureted vehicle with a choke, and then it would be revved up, and then sometimes it was so cold that the choke would come back on when you were driving it or whatever. If it's like minus 30, minus 40 in Canada, the choke would actually come back on from it being so cold. And then you'd come to a stoplight and be at like, you know, 2000 RPM or whatever, and you have to like panic and put it into neutral or whatever, or try to kick it down in neutral or people don't have those problems anymore, and I think that's actually made people worse drivers because of that. So I don't know. This is my opinion, but so like I said, whatever. It's just driving for your road conditions and things like that. And said it just there's a lot of vehicles out there that you could get, and a lot of people just already have the vehicle that are capable for them. Like when you look around these days, there's a lot of trucks on the road that are 4-wheel drive trucks. There's tons of them around that are. I mean, honestly, seems like every freaking house has a 4-wheel drive truck these days. So it's not like it's like people don't have the ability to use that, you know, truck or whatever in that bad weather, but it's like people don't anticipate how to drive in it, especially those first snowfalls or whatever there. You start getting that first snowfall where it's like kind of like icy underneath and then it's that loose snow on top. Seems like people are really bad. After they get in an accident or two, then, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll slow down now, or maybe I'll get winter tires or whatever. And I know a lot of people will say, like, well, I can't afford winter tires. Well, then you probably shouldn't be on the road. Maybe you should just dial it back and not be on the road those much. If you can't afford to have the proper stuff, and if you're going to cause accidents and things like that, then you should probably not be on the road and compromising other people's safety or whatever. So it's not that much. Like I said, you can get two tires for your drive tires or whatever. You have a front wheel drive or rear wheel drive or whatever. You get like two winter tires at a minimum, and at least you could, $150 probably. Like I said, $300. If you $300 for four winter tires. If you can't afford $300 for four winter tires, then you probably shouldn't be driving anyways. So that's again, especially in crazy weather like that, when people are like driving out in snowstorms and they don't have winter tires on and things like that. I think that's pretty that's pretty terrible decision. So especially when there's so many options out there. It's not like you back in the day again, you used to have to be like, go to the tire shop and wait for the tires and order the right size or blah 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 blah, or to be backed up or whatever. It's like now you can order them on Amazon and they'll be here in a couple of days or whatever. And you know that when winter's coming and things, so you guys can be ready ahead of time or whatever. It's not that big of a deal. So, but like I said, just either have a dedicated vehicle or at least set of winter tires and some stuff like that. If you don't, you could even get a set of cheap tire chains or cables or whatever, depending on what you're doing and where you're driving and all that stuff. But I think I'm gonna lose some light here or whatever. So I just figured I'd pop on and goof around a little bit here, see what everybody's up to today. And I'm gonna get home and have some coffee. It looks like there. So getting close to Christmas, I suppose. So I should probably finish up my Christmas life there. But yeah. Anyway, so catch you guys on the next one. Make sure you guys like and subscribe and do all the things there. And appreciate all the views and support so far. We've been rolling here lately, so gonna have some cool content coming up pretty soon. Hopefully the weather holds out, so I don't have to deal with too much problems like snow or anything like that. So I do have the Buick with the winter tires, so maybe we'll take it out and screw around for fun. All right, guys.